TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
Hey guys, welcome in. It is Monday, the last day of September, I think. And it is Major League Baseball play-in day with the Braves and the Mets. And what a game that first one was. Holy cow. Drama City all over the place. So we're going to talk Major League Baseball today. I wanted to go over some stuff regarding some analysis on just the teams, the managers, the offenses, the pitchers, some thoughts, some ideas, so that you know, when you're starting to look at these series prices and you're starting to look at different things, you kind of have an idea maybe of where you want to go, and then, you know, officially start thinking about making your bets. So we'll do that. The outcome of this series that's being played right now, this doubleheader. The first game, the Mets won, so they're in. But even though they're in, we don't know who they play because if we need them to know the outcome of this game, because they could play the Padres or they could play the Brewers, depending upon what happens here. The Braves obviously lost the first game, so they need to win this game. So if the Braves win this game, they're in and they go play San Diego. That's just how it works. And the Mets will then go play Milwaukee. If they lose, then you've got the different scenario. You've got the Mets play the Padres, and the Diamondbacks will then go play the Brewers. So it's kind of an interesting setup how it is. In that first game, man, Schwellenbach couldn't have pitched any better than what he did for the Braves. You know, he got him deep into the game. No runs. The Braves Albies hit a 2-run home run, took the lead. Laureano hit another home run, made it 3-0. And then I don't know if you guys remember back, you know, I was kind of complaining about a game that the Mets played. And I think it was, I don't remember who they played in the game. Maybe it was the Nationals or somebody like that. I don't remember who it was. But I played under in the game. I think I played under 8. And it might have even been under 8.5. I don't remember. But it was a no-hitter. And the Mets were being no-hit in the game. And then in the top of the 9th inning, the Mets just, after being no hit, tied the game and then kept going. And they scored 6 runs, made it 6-1. That's a lot of runs to score in one inning, and it's 6-1. So there's 7 runs in the game. So maybe it was 8 runs or 7.5 or something. I don't remember. Whatever the number was. But the reality is then that they gave up another run in the bottom of that inning, and the final score was 6-2. Well, this first game with the Braves, I bring that up because the Braves are ahead 3-0, and then a double, a home run, and some other stuff. And all of a sudden, the Mets scored 6 runs, and it was 6-3. Mets were ahead going into the bottom of the 8th inning. So then in the bottom of the 8th inning, the Braves said, well, we're not done. So they went out. Ozzie Albies had bases loaded, hit a double, cleared all of them, drove in all 3, and made the score 8-7. Is that right? Whatever it was. It was a 1-1 lead for the Braves. 7-6, I'm sorry. So I made it 7-6. And then go back into the top of the ninth inning. They need 3 outs. They get the first guy out. Marte comes up, gets a single, and then Lindor hits a home run, and the Mets take the lead again. And the Mets go on to win that game 8-7. And then they got to play again at 4:20, which, half an hour, 30 minutes after the other game ends. And, the Braves are set up pretty well. The line in that game was minus 550. That's because Chris Sale was going to pitch. Well, then Chris Sale's got a stiff back and back spasms, and he can't pitch. So the Mets have Lucchesi on the mound, call up, he was going to pitch. Severino was listed to pitch if they needed him to. So now Lucchesi's going to pitch, and, Lindor's not playing in this game, and Alvarez not playing in this game. Vientos not playing in this game. So they got several of their starters not in the game, but Lucchesi's on the mound. So then the Braves now, who had Sale ready to go, can't pitch. And what do? Well, they went to Holmes. He's a relief pitcher, and seeing how long he can go. And they're going to have to piecemeal this game and try to win it. They scored first, so they're ahead 1-0, but they're in a bad spot right now. This game is 1-0 still, but it's in the 5th inning, and the Mets have 2 guys on base, first and second. And when I was watching it here just a second ago, it's on my office TV here. It's 2 guys on, and they didn't have anybody out, so it was kind of a rough spot. So I don't know if they got out of the inning. Looks like the Mets are in the field now, so I don't see a score, but have to look at that in just a second. So let's get into how these playoffs work. So the wild card round is a best of 3. The division round, which is the next step, is a best of 5. And then the championship series is a best of 7. So in the best of 3, you just got to win 2 games. And usually, I shouldn't say usually, you're just going to throw your best pitchers as best you can, as often as you can. So the format's important because the next set of games, as a handicapper, you got to kind of figure out whether or not you really want to handicap the first 3 starters or whether you really want to handicap the 4th starter too. And I think the champion or the division series, depending upon which teams have what pitchers, you're probably going to handicap 4 pitchers, not 3 pitchers. This series, the wild card series, you might want to just look at 3 pitchers. Hey, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Yo, how you doing, man? Thanks for stepping in, saying hi. So one of the things I think that's important when you come to this stuff and when you're looking at the playoffs, the first thing is Major League Baseball over 162 games is not the same thing as Major League Baseball in the playoffs. Certain things have way more importance than others. Over 162 games, offense is extremely important. Teams that are real streaky and really hitting and go into 5, 6, 7, 8, 10-day stretches where they're doing really good on offense, those things matter a lot in a 162-game season. In a short series like this, offenses get suppressed. And they get suppressed because the manager on the other side, the guys running the show, they won't let offenses do a lot. Meaning that if you get a couple hits, that pitcher's coming out of this game. You're not going to have a guy out there for 90 pitches set up to go to the next game, and you're saving your bullpen for stuff. So you're not. So every game is significantly important, and it's played that way. So bullpens and the dominance of bullpens, I should say, is even more important. So, you have, and we're going to discuss this in a minute, we have a lot of teams that are coming into the playoffs that have pretty good bullpens. But there's only a handful of those good bullpens that are dominant bullpens that are shutdown type guys that go out and strike people out. There's a lot of them that are not dominant that way, where they get outs and they get things done and they get results, but they're not dominant. They still require their defense to do some things for them. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. So I think when you're going to start looking at playoffs, you got to understand that we're not handicapping the same way we did during the season, because the games aren't played that way. Everything is significant, and every out makes one step closer to the win, and you only need a certain number of them. In the first series, you need 3, right? In the second series, you need 4, and in the fifth series, you need 5. And then you're in the World Series. So as these games kind of develop and as they grow, you're going to see some differences in how things are done, A, by the managers, and B, how these teams set up. So it's important for us to understand who has great starting pitching, who has good starting pitching, who is going to piecemeal everything together, what kind of a bullpen do they have, and ideally what teams have the ability to hit damaging blows. Because when you're on offense, you're just trying to get on base any way you can, and you're going to want to hit a double, steal bases, do whatever you can to get runs in. So the extra bases are going to be important in these series. So I'm not trying to tell you that they don't score runs, but I am trying to tell you that ideally you won't see 10-7 kind of games too much. There's certainly possibilities of that, but you're not going to see it too much. So anyway, that's kind of how I think about these games and so forth. So if I was going to put some structure to it, the way I would think about it is I want a starting pitcher that's going to give me 5 or 6, really 6 at the best, of great pitching, meaning you get 1 run or less, right? I mean, that's what I'm looking for. And then I'm looking for some guys that can come out of the bullpen and carry me home. And then on offense, I need some guys that can get on base, and then I need some guys. I don't care if they strike out, but I need guys that can hit power wise, because the way you're going to win these games is you're going to hit a 2-run homer or a 3-run homer, stuff like that, or you're going to hit that double when you got a guy on second base and you drive him in, or maybe even when he's on first base, and then defense comes into play a little bit here, guys that because every game is significantly magnified. Defense is something that's important, and we're going to look at defense here in a minute. So let me pull up what I've got listed out here. And what I've done is I have, look, Atlanta got out of it. It's 1-0 still, Atlanta. So where I'm at with what I've done is I've gone through every team's, say, first 5 guys that are going to pitch, and then every team's bullpen. And then I went through their offense. I went through the managers, and we'll go through some of the manager stuff here in a second too, because I think it's important. And then we went through some defense. Defense, when we get there, is going to be something that is subjective to what you want to look at. And I use 2 different structures for that as we go. And one of them is an overall performance rating, and that comes from Fangraphs, and the other one is defensive run saved. So I use both of those because the overall rating also includes things like range, how you can get to balls that other players can't, or whether it's on the infield or the outfield, and you're taking you're taking hits away, stuff like that. So it's an overall defensive rating. And then obviously defensive run saved is exactly what it is. It tells you how many runs could have scored if the defense was worse. But your defense was so good that you saved your team a certain number of runs for the other team. And I think those are important numbers in these kind of series. One of the things that we're going to be betting as we look at numbers, and I got to wait for more of them to come out. I've seen some series prices. I've seen some things on some of this stuff because there's only 2 matchups. The American League is kind of ready to go. But when it comes to, and I should probably pull that up while I'm thinking about it. But when it comes to kind of what we're doing and where we're at with betting on these games, there's one bet that I really like to make, and I think I talked about this before. Instead of betting like overs and unders, I'll do that. But I like to bet. Runs plus hits plus errors in that total number, and we'll talk about that bet too. So let's talk about the teams for a minute. And it's not really the best for us to get into. We're going to talk about the teams that are going to be playing here. So the Yankees are on a bye, right? So we don't really need to talk about them too much, even though we are. We're going to hit them up some. We're not going to talk about the Dodgers. We're not going to talk about the Phillies, and we're not going to talk too much about Cleveland. We will get there towards the end, but the teams that are going to be playing each other kind of matters, right? So as we're looking at this, let's talk about the series between the Houston Astros and the Detroit Tigers. One thing that's kind of cool, the way Major League Baseball does their schedule now, is all these teams have played each other. And this year, the Astros and the Tigers have played 6 times. And in the 6 times, the Astros are 4-2 in those 6 games. The number on this game in game 1, which is interesting, so everybody's always talking about Tariq Skubal, the best pitcher that Detroit has, and may very well be, and probably likely is, the American League Cy Young Award pitcher. And he's going to face Valdez in game 1. And this game, and I'm not going to do a game-by-game breakdown, so that's not what this is. We'll do those tomorrow as we're getting ready to bet on these things. But this one is opened at minus 140 for Houston. Now, I will tell you that this game would not have been that way in the regular season. In the regular season, this was probably closer to pick 'em, if not Detroit being a favorite, to be honest, because that's the way everything was done with Tariq Skubal starts. So I found it interesting that it opened as a favorite for Houston. So that's significant in terms of other things as you're looking at it. And then 2, the total in this game is only 6.5. So they're expecting hardly any runs, and rightfully so. I mean, Valdez has been really good, and Skubal's been really good. So the reason I tell you that it's interesting in terms of the way Skubal is, because that line is because the series price. So the series price is Houston opened at minus 170, Circa's at minus 180, bookmakers at 169. So theoretically, you're looking at, between the two of them is a minus 175. So let's talk about that for a second. So when I pull up the data on these two teams, and what I'm using for data is the second half of the season, not the last 30 days like I normally do. Now I'll do the last 30 days for like individual game performance and stuff, but for getting an evaluation on what these pitchers are like, I use the second half, not the first half. So in the second half of the season, the number 1 starting pitching grouping of players is the Houston Astros. And I'm not talking about of the playoff teams. I'm talking about all Major League Baseball. They're number 1 in WAR. Number 1. So Framber Valdez earned 2.2 WAR in the second half of the season. He's the guy, and he's starting tomorrow. Hunter Brown was 2.1 WAR. Hisai Kikuchi was 1.4 WAR. Now, then they had Arrighetti and Blanco 1-1. And I don't know if those guys are going to pitch. I would assume Arrighetti might start. I don't know if Blanco would. And I don't know how they're going to use those guys out of the bullpen or whatever. And they still got Verlander, right? But I don't think they're going to – Verlander's, I don't think, going to see any action here this way. He might be a bullpen piece. Who knows? So I look at that. They're the number one starting pitching staff in all of baseball. Big edge to the Houston Astros. And the reason that's a big edge is because they can now go 6 innings, 5 innings, 6 innings, and assuredly have the edge anytime they face any one of these other teams. Now, in this case, in this particular game, it might not be quite that way because Tariq Skubal is a 2.5 WAR pitcher over the second half of the season. So he kind of outdoes any of those other pitchers for Houston, but not by enough that you sit there and go, oh, well, that just slants the whole thing to the side of Tariq Skubal. It doesn't. So that brings into the effect of, well, how far can he go? What kind of experience does he have? Because that matters. These guys that pitch these games that tend to do poorly, almost always do poorly. They just don't have the mental makeup to do it. Or some of these guys, and the way it kind of looks out, most of these guys who are going to be pitching, they don't have any playoff experience. And I don't want to say stunned. That's not the right word. Taken aback by how many really don't have that experience. So even for the Astros, after saying how great they were, Framber Valdez, he's pitched 15 times in the playoffs, and the Astros have won 10 of those games. That's a dynamite number because most of these, if you can be 500-ish or a little bit better than 500-ish in this type of a scenario, that's really good. And he's 2/3. So that's a guy you want on the mound. Tariq Skubal, 0 starts. Has never started a playoff game. So let's take that one step further. There's not one Detroit Tiger pitcher that's a starting pitcher. That includes Reese Olson, Casey Mize, Kiter Montero, Brant Hurt, any of those guys that are going to pitch. None of them have ever started a playoff game before. So there's a big edge on the mound to start for the Houston Astros, and it's big. But I was kind of surprised to know that Yusei Kikuchi has never started a game before. He's pitched in the playoffs, but never started a game. Hunter Brown has pitched in the playoffs before, but never started a game. Arrighetti, this is his first season. Blanco, it's kind of his first season. He's pitched before, but none of those guys have started. So you've got 2 teams where you've got a pretty dominant Framber Valdez starting pitcher makeup, been around the block, has the experience, 10-5, perfect guy to have on the mound, and especially facing a guy like Tariq Skubal. And then you've got other guys that don't have any kind of history. But what you do have is good pitching. So, Hunter Brown is a 2.1 WAR. So say he's the next guy in line, and I don't know if he's going to be or not, but say he is. Say Hunter Brown's 2.1. Well, the next guy for the Detroit Tigers that WAR-wise is Kiter Montero at 0.3. It's not even close to how much comparison different. That means that Hunter Brown is 7 times better than their pitcher. And he's the next best guy. Reese Olson, 0.1, and he just came off the disabled list and hasn't looked good, done well. Casey Mize is minus 0.1. So what's going to happen in Detroit is, I heard A.J. Hinch made this statement. He said, we're going to start Tariq Skubal when Tariq Skubal starts. After that, we're going to have pitching chaos. And that's what he's going to have. So for Detroit to be competitive and win these games, AJ Hinch is going to have to be the best manager and be the best bullpen negotiation guy, matchup to matchup kind of spot guy that he can possibly be to match up to get outs. And can they do that? That's the first question. And the answer to that question is their bullpen ranks 7th in the second half of the season. So they've got experience there. But their K per 9 rank is 29th out of 30 teams. And their stuff plus grade, so that's the grade for all of them, how good the stuff plus is, meaning that the velocity, the movement, how the vertical movement, the horizontal movement, all of that stuff, the spin rate, they rank 30th out of 30 teams. So they don't strike guys out and they don't have good stuff. What they do is they're number 1 at WHIP, walks plus hits divided by innings pitched. They make the opponent earn it. Well, in the playoffs, it's a little different. So it's a pressure-packed situation. You need to get an out or 2 outs. Maybe you have guys on second and third with 1 out, and you need a strikeout. They don't really, they don't have a guy that's going to come in out of their bullpen that's double-digit strikeouts per 9 innings. They're going to hit the ball. They're going to move it. And because they hit the ball, that 1 run that you need to prevent from scoring is going to score. So my opinion is that the way Detroit has been winning games using the bullpen and mixing and matching and doing all this stuff to be creative and get outs is going to be really hard for them. Now, I say all of this to then say, look, both offenses are about the same. You think about Houston as being a really big offense, but offensively, Houston is a team that ranks 17th in isolated power, 15th in weighted on base, the WOBA, and they're. So I'm going to introduce you to a new term. Weighted runs above average. So instead of using weighted runs created plus, where everything's graded on a 100 scale, I can just tell you, we're going to do it this way. This is going to tell you how many runs better a team is versus an average team. And the Houston Astros are 2.6 runs better than an average team. So that means they're slightly better than an average team. And based on their ranks being 17th and 15th, and there's 30 teams, that's kind of where you already see them. They are scoring 4.16 runs per game. That's where they're at. So they need good pitching, and that's going to show you where, okay, can Detroit hang in these games? Well, they might be able to. The pitching matchups are going to matter, but I don't think they're going to be able to prevent that big run from scoring that Houston can gather. So I think there's some disadvantage there. I already talked about starting pitching is totally a wash for Detroit. So they don't match up there at all. And then offensively for Detroit, they rank 19th in isolated power, 18th in weighted on base percentage, and they're minus 3.7 runs per game to an average offense. So they're below average. And there's 2 worse than that, but that's not a good spot for them to be in because of this. If you look at like the playoff history and look at like how many hits some of these guys have in their career, home runs, damaging blows, stuff like that. Look, Altuve is the man. I mean, and so is Alvarez. Now, it's questionable whether Alvarez is even going to be able to play. So we'll see how that all works out. But there's no question that the starting 9 infielders, position players, starting 8, are more experienced in the playoffs for Houston than it is for Detroit. Detroit's not been there. So there's no question that there's another edge when you think about playoff experience that matters. That has to go to Houston. There's another in their bucket, right? So as we're looking at this, you kind of start thinking, this doesn't look good for Detroit. And to be quite honest with you, looking at my notes, I've got Houston starting pitching is they're going to be the favorite in every game, and maybe other than when Scooble pitches, and now we have numbers, that's not going to be the case. So he's favored in there. Although Houston's not as experienced as you might think. In the playoffs, only Valdez and Verlander have game starts. Detroit has zero body starting games. The Detroit bullpens mix and match. They're not a strikeout unit. I made a note. AJ Hinch needs to be masterful. Detroit's going to be the dog in every game. The Houston bullpen, here's a big difference. If Detroit's in a scoring possibility and they need somebody to come out and get a strikeout, they can do it. They are a team that bullpen rise. They're not a great bullpen. They rank 24th and more over, but what they do, they're number 3 in strikeouts per 9 innings and number 2 in stuff plus. So they have great stuff when they come out of the bullpen and they get strikeouts. So Josh Hader, 11, and he's going to be a later down the road guy. But so say Brian Abreu, 10.41, Hector Neris, 10.57, Caleb Ferguson, 11.14, Brian King, 12. These are strikeouts per 9 innings. So if they need an out and they need a strikeout, they got guys they can go get. And velocity wise, you're looking at Josh Hader's average fastball is 96.5. Brian Abreu, 97. Caleb Ort, now he's not done real well, but 97.6. These are guys that can come out of the bullpen and juiced up, throw, close to 100 miles an hour, if not 100 miles an hour, and make it really hard on the Detroit. So I like their bullpen in this matchup. Says Houston position players, big edge. Houston, Alvarez, Altuve, career tops, major league players in postseason baseball. Most of those, they're big numbers, and especially home run numbers for both of them. So one of the things that was kind of interesting, and especially in this first game, because Houston's going to have the way it works out, Valdez is a left-handed pitcher. Kikuchi's a left-handed pitcher. Brown, Arrighetti, Blanco, Verlander, right-handed pitchers. Well, this kind of matters because when you look at the offense and you look at the performance and you break it out that way, Detroit weighted runs above average. They're minus 9.6 runs versus left-handed pitchers. And they're plus 5.6 runs versus right-handed pitchers. Isolated power for them against lefties, 22nd out of 30 teams. They have hit the smallest amount of home runs of any of the playoff teams, 15, against left-handed pitching. So I think there's a big edge, too, then when Valdez is pitching and when Kikuchi pitches. Kikuchi's hittable, but at the same time, if you don't hit lefties, because here's what happens. Kerry Carpenter is a left-handed hitter. And when they play left-handed pitchers, he's not a very good guy against left-handed pitchers, so they sit him a lot. And his replacement player is nowhere near what Kerry Carpenter is and what he can do for that Detroit Tiger team. So that's a big problem for them. The other issue that I thought was kind of interesting for Detroit is they have a guy whose name is Jackson Jobe. And I don't know if you know him, but Jackson Jobe is a call-up kid. But he's highly touted, and he's supposed to be like the next best starting pitcher kind of guy. Well, they called him up, and they're going to use him in the bullpen. his average fastball is 98.2. Yeah, 98.2. So he's going to throw 100 miles an hour out of the bullpen. My guess is he hasn't pitched enough to really get good traction on what he's doing in the he's pitched, I don't know, maybe 4 innings in the major leagues, but his strikeout, it's only 4.5 per 9 innings. But that kind of velocity, he could be an X factor for their bullpen, which could help them a ton when you need a strikeout, because you look, that's the way these playoffs work. You're gonna need that to happen. I was just checking the score. It's commercial. So I thought it was interesting that Houston can throw 2 lefties, and that's not a good matchup for Detroit. I will say this: of all the managers, we're going to go to managers for a second. AJ Hinch has managed 50 playoff games. Only Dave Roberts has more. He's got 84 playoff games. AJ Hinch is 28-22. So can you really count on him in these spots? I'm not sure that that's the right thing to say, but he knows more about doing it and how to do it than I think that you can give to somebody who's never done it. The one thing that I did look at, so you can grade managers on how they, what's really just pitchers, starting pitchers, or not starting pitchers, but pitchers per game, and get a feel for how many adjustments they make. It's kind of a hard thing to kind of look at, in a sense that we're getting ready to go into games where they're going to be way more apt to pull guys. But you get a feel for it. The AJ Hinch rating is a 102. 100 is average. 102 means he's more apt to pull guys and put other guys in than leave them out there. So that tells me that all season long he's been doing this mix and match and pulling these things. 102 is the highest, second highest rating out there. Dave Roberts is the highest. So he's the second highest rating. So I feel comfortable, if you like that idea, that AJ Hinch is going to be able to pull the right strings, do the right matchups, put his team in a position to win. I don't know that it's always going to work out every time. That's still 1-0 in the 7th inning. Every time, I don't know that it's going to be, because those guys, you can put 4 guys in there, and all it takes is one of them to have a bad day, and then you got 2 or 3 runs scored against you, and then it's too late, and you've lost a game. So let's take what we've learned from what we just kind of looked at from this series and go, where's the edges, right? So at the beginning of this whole segment, we talked about what playoff baseball is, and it's timely scoring, timely hitting, home runs. It's powerful blows on offense. It's quality starting pitching, and guys that can get you into the 6th inning, because then you don't have to bridge it any farther. You got guys that can come in the 7th, 8th, and 9th, but you also need guys that can come in and get you strikeouts and get that one out when you need it. And the last thing here, defensively, I didn't really talk about. Detroit ranks 5th in overall rank, and Houston ranks 14th. So there's a significant edge there. Detroit's going to make it a little harder. They're not going to give up stuff. And theoretically, Houston being 15th is kind of average. They shouldn't do it either. But that helps to understand when you do walks plus hits plus errors, because errors go into that. So looking at the edges, there's definitely Houston has a starting pitching edge. They have a small offensive edge. They have an edge, again, when they throw left-handed pitching, and they got 2 of them. And their bullpen can go out and get that out that they have to have without the batter making contact. They can get the strikeout. So I don't really see Detroit doing well here. So the question then becomes, how do you bet it? And my opinion is going to tell you just to bet the series and be done with it. I shouldn't say be done with it. Bet this series at -1, whatever you can get. I mean, it's one. I used an average between the two, where there it is. So Circa's -180 and Bookmakers 170. So that's 10. So 5. So 175. If you bet Houston -175, you got to win 3 games. So there's a chance that you don't win the first one, but I think you will. I think maybe this game is 1-1, and then the bullpens come in, and then I think you've got an edge with the bullpen for Houston. Even though the Detroit's bullpen's been good, I still think it works differently in the playoffs. So we'll just say, even if they lose the first game, then the next time you're going to have Hunter Brown going against who knows who. Then you're going to have Kikuchi. So you're going to win those games. You only got to win one more. So you get another shot with Valdez. Or maybe you throw your fourth guy. But I don't know that they would do that. And throw their fourth guy and then have Valdez come back on the backside to face Skubal again. That's where Detroit has a problem. They don't have enough pitchers to fill those spots. So even if they win the first game, I don't see them winning this series. But if they win the first game, you could certainly get a much better price on the series if you bet it that way. So you're looking at so here. Let's think this through. So if the number's I'm looking at 142 at Circa, 140 at Bookmaker for tomorrow's one game. And say you bet on the Astros and you bet them because it's -141, and we'll just say they lose that game. Then you can bet the Astros in the series price, and you can bet the series price probably at -120. And then you don't have to bet on any of the other individual games unless you bet it a certain way. So I like in this game, and now this is the total 6.5. So let's walk through this. Let's walk through this runs plus hits plus errors bet. So it takes where's my calculator? There it is. It takes 2.2 hits to score 1 run. So if you have 6.5 as a total times 2.2 equals. So that's 14 hits in this game. So now you have 14 hits plus 6.6 runs, 6.5 runs. So we have 14.3 hits plus 6.5 runs. So we're at 20.8 runs plus hits. That's where we're at. And then if they decide, all right, well, let's throw an error out there or 2, because that's what they do. You might see this runs plus hits plus errors number be 23. I'm just making this number up, but it might be like that. So 23. If that number is 23, then do you bet over runs plus hits plus errors or under runs plus hits plus errors? In the playoff games, they don't string hits together. They hit home runs. So I'm going to look at it and go, there's 23 runs plus hits plus errors as that number. I'm going to bet under that number because I think that they can score the right amount of runs with less number of hits. And as long as they don't butcher me up on errors, get 2 or 3 errors or something that runs that number over, that's how you bet that number. The key is to look at the total and go, oh, the total's 6.5. Well, 6.5 times 2.2. That's how many hits it takes to score 1 run. So if they're telling you they're only going to score 6.5 runs and it's shaded under, then you're going to look at it and go, let's add those 2 numbers together, and then throw in 1 or 2 errors here, 1 for each team, say, and we're looking at 22.8. Which they'll give you a number of 23. So if runs plus hits plus errors is 23, then I'm probably looking at an under on that number, but they might even have it jacked up a little higher. These are crazy numbers when they come out. So we'll see what it looks like. But that's how that works. So you can bet individual bets like that while you have made a bet, say, on the series. So my advice is going to be in this particular spot. I think unless you can get a better number, it looks like bookmakers down to 165 now. So, maybe that number is going to come down to 170 instead of, say, 170. Maybe it is going to be a 165 kind of number. Look, 165, I'll take it. I'll bet that today, as opposed to having to worry about whether Scooble beats the Astros. But the Astros are really good against left-handed pitching. I forgot to tell you that. If I go back and look at the offense and then I break it down to left-handed pitching, Houston, they are 14.6 runs better than an average team. They rank 13th in isolated power. They've hit 24 home runs against left-handed pitching. So they're good against lefties. And, obviously they're going to face the best lefty. So we'll see how that plays out. So I guess the way I'm thinking about looking at this and kind of walking it through, I'm making a note. There's no question, you want to bet the Houston in the series price. But I think, if you were to bet it where, say, so here's what will happen. If Houston wins game one, then that series price is going to go up to like 250. It's going to go to a point where you don't want to bet it. Because they only got to win 2 games, and Detroit's got no pitchers. So I think thinking about this, I think what you want to do is you want to bet Houston in the series price first, and then because you don't want to miss out on the number. Certainly they could lose game one, and then you could have had a better number. So maybe you double dip. But and then you don't play any of the individual games at all in terms of the sides. You can still bet totals. You can still bet runs plus hits plus errors. And then you look at each individual game kind of matched up, which I'll do tonight for this game. But I think in terms of series, in terms of what I'm looking at, there's no question in my mind Houston's going to win this series. It's at home for them. They got lefties going against a team that doesn't hit lefties, and Detroit's got pitchers that they can't pitch. So there you go. That's kind of how I look at that series. So anyway, that's series number 1. Series number 2, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do too much with the National League. We'll do some, but not a lot. We've got Baltimore and Kansas City. Now, this is another one of those, okay, they played each other 6 times. Baltimore won 4 out of 6. So Baltimore's 4-2. And what's interesting here, too, is this is going to be another one of those upstart teams, right? The Tigers got in, and now you have the Royals that got in, and the Royals have one pitcher who's made starts before in the postseason, and that's Michael Wacha. And that was when he was with the Cardinals. So, that's a long time ago. So it's one of these spots where there's no playoff experience for them. Baltimore was an upstart last year. They made the playoffs, won 100 games last year, which is kind of interesting. Major League Baseball this year, there was no 100-win team. But they won 100 games last year and got just – this kind of tells you what playoff experience means. They won 100 games and went and played 3 games, lost all 3, 0-3 in the playoffs. So they still have, though, playoff experience edge. They've been there. They've done that. These are also going to be home games. So that does matter. And, all these Royal players haven't had any of that. Their best player is Bobby Witt Jr., and he's the second year. He's never made the playoffs, never had a taste of it. So it's kind of interesting how that kind of matches up. Now, I will say this matchup is a lot different than the first one we talked about. It's way different. You have sort of a small experienced edge for Baltimore because, even though you have Gunnar Henderson and, Rutschman and those guys that didn't, do a whole lot previous, they have experience, even though it's only 3 games. So they lost all 3. So they're certainly going to want to win these games. Not that when you get to the playoffs, you're not going to want to win them. But point being is they don't want to be in a spot where last year they had 0-3 that they want to replicate that. So in breaking this series down, you got to start right where we start with all of them. Let's go look at the pitchers, right? So when you look at Baltimore's pitchers, you have Corbin Burns, Zach Eflin, Dean Kramer, and I'll bet you they're going to throw Cade Povich is what I think they're going to do. And you have Albert Suarez. So you have 5 guys. And that 5-unit group ranks 10th in the second half of the season of all Major League Baseball. 10th. I think that's pretty good because I didn't think it was going to be that high. They miss Grayson Rodriguez. I mean, if Grayson Rodriguez was in there, say, and like in this particular station spot, you don't have Albert Suarez. Oh, Braves took a 3-0 lead. I think Braves are going to go in. So I think Diamondbacks are probably out, but we'll see. This is the 8th inning, so we'll see what happens. And I've got kind of notes for that, but so they rank 10th. But their best pitcher in the second half of the season in terms of WAR is not Corbin Burns. It's Dean Kramer, 1.3 WAR, and Corbin Burns, 1.1 WAR, Zach Eflin, 0.9 WAR. So let's see. Kansas City Royals rank 3rd, which that's been their reason how they win games is – and their pitching goes deep in games, and other teams don't score a lot. And then they bring in a bullpen and hope to God that bullpen holds it, number 1. And then number 2, they just hope to God that Bobby Witt Jr. goes off because they don't have anybody else on offense. So their number 1 pitcher has been Seth Lugo, second half, 1.9 WAR. Cole Reagans, 1.4, Michael Walker, 1.7, Brady Singer, 1.2. All of those pitchers, WAR-wise numbers are better than the Baltimore Orioles pitchers. So that puts a different way to look at this series. We just said Baltimore's got a small experience edge. Won 100 games last year, in the playoffs again this year. They were 0-3, quickly eliminated last year. They come back this season. They've been expected to be in there all season. They didn't win the division, but they're in. Now they play a team that can pitch. Interestingly, there's only one pitcher for the Royals who's a lefty. It's Cole Reagan. And he's pitching, I think, opening day. So I got mixed feelings about that. I got mixed feelings about their pitching staff altogether, and we'll talk about that. So that sets up for, 3rd best pitchers against the 10th best pitchers. So how do they match up to offenses? Well, this is where things get out of hand. The Baltimore offense, 4.92 runs per game in the second half, 5.6 runs above average. So not the greatest offense in the world because, there are teams that have 30 runs above average and they rank 5th, or they're not 5th. They have 5 runs. So they rank 8th in getting on base in hits, average, that kind of stuff. Weighted on base average, WOBA. And they rank 15th in isolated power. And I always think of Baltimore as a team that has power. And they really don't. They're just average. They get on base a lot. So there's a lot of walks, and that means they have high batting averages. So it's good for them to get on base. Or certain guys have high batting averages anyway. But they play Kansas City. And Kansas City averages 2.17 runs a game. They are 30th in isolated power, 30th in weighted on base, minus 26 runs to an average team. You can't win. You can't win. You can't win that way. So all these nice things we're talking about with the Kansas City Royals, they don't score any runs. So they're going to have to win games 3-2, 2-1, 2-0. And here's where the problem comes in for their pitching staff. Other than Reagan's, they don't have guys that have stuff plus numbers that are going to blow you away. So what I mean by that is they're going to go out there and I'm trying to pull it up so I can share it with you. These guys are in a spot where pitchers, there we go. Their stuff plus numbers need to be high. So if they're high, they can get a bunch of strikeouts. They can dominate games. Second half of the season, where are you? Second half, there you are. Go to the Royals. Royals, there we go. And starting pitchers, that's what I want. Starting pitchers, I don't need them to be qualified. So let's go there, and then we're going to go to pitch modeling, stuff plus, and here we go. So 100 is average, and Alec Marsh, who probably won't start a game in the playoffs unless they make it to the next round, he's a 100. Seth Lugo's a 95. Michael Walker's a 91. Michael Lorenzen's a 90. And Brady Singer's an 81. That's their rank on Stuff Plus. I didn't say Cole Raggins because he's a 108. He's the one that has dynamite stuff. Now, the problem with that is that he's also not mentally tough guy, meaning that if you get on him and get going, he's going to fall right into it and let you do it. He doesn't have that mentally tough gear that makes it so that these guys that stops the flow. In other words, once the flow starts, it's going to flow. So he's like an average pitcher. His season, if I go back to how many starts he's made and what his team has done, we'll go look at that. Cole Reagan's. We'll go to game logs, and he has made 32 starts. The Royals are 16-16, and that's a big deal. Corbin Burns, who he's going to face, doesn't have near the stuff that Raggins does. He's made 32 starts, 20-12. That's that extra mental toughness that says, I'm not going to give in. I'm going to get you out. I'm going to make you hit the ground ball. I'm going to do what I need to do to get out of this inning. He's got that, and Reagan's doesn't. So the one pitcher that has the ability to go out there and dominate because of the quality of the stuff that he throws doesn't have it up here, but he's young, so that can be developed with experience. So it's not like it's the end of the world early for him. But that sets you back in a spot where I still don't like his matchup that way. So to say this in a polite way, the Royals have an advantage of starting pitching. But through a 162 season, they do. On an individual game-by-game matchup, Seth Lugo is going to be their best guy. And he's not starting the number one spot. He's going to start number 2. So then can Zach Eflin match that? Well, if the other team only scores 2 runs a game, Zach Eflin might be the best pitcher of all pitchers. So that's where you got a problem with the Royals. So even though the Royals can pitch and fight through some of this stuff, you're not going to win games if you don't score runs. So then even if the other team, we're in the ninth inning now, Braves are going to make it. I think Diamondbacks are out. But even if you take this and you go and say, all right, well, what if this is a close game and both pitchers do pretty good? What about the bullpens? Well, the bullpen for Baltimore comes in, and it's not very good. It ranks 20th. That's not a good bullpen. The Royals bullpen is much higher ranked than I thought it was going to be. It ranks 11th. That's because of one guy. Before the trade deadline, they made a trade with the Oakland A's, and they got Lucas Erceg. Lucas Erceg in the second half, as a relief pitcher, his WAR rating is 1.4 WAR. He's earned. No other relief pitcher is there. Some of them are at 1, but 1.4, nope, he's it. He's the only one. He's 11.16 strikeout guy. He can come in. He throws 99 miles an hour. He can get you out. He's the one guy. So maybe they can win a game. I mean, how often are they going to use him? Every day? They might. I think they did ever since they got him, use him almost every day, because the rest of their guys, Chris Bubik is the next best guy they got, and he's a former starter. And then you got John Schreiber, Daniel Lynch, Alec March. Look, those are former starters. And that doesn't mean this former starter can't be a reliever. It just means that they're not in that dominant relief role that you want to see these guys come out and get outs, right? So I sit here and go, I don't get it. And then, but on the other side, and you go, the bullpen for Baltimore is not very good. You've got, they're trying to use Sir Anthony Dominguez as a closer. He got great strikeouts, 11.12, high velocity, big time stuff. 142 is his ranking on stuff, 142. And remember, we just said, well, the other guy was great at 108. But he's got a minus number for his actual performance and productivity. WAR is not good. And then Yainer Cano is really good. Keegan Aiken's been real good for them coming out of the pen lately. Maybe they can piecemeal some of that together for them, but ideally, the Orioles might not have to do a whole lot there. Maybe these guys can go deeper into games. I think Burns, if he's on and doing well, he can go 7. Eflin can go 7. Kramer, if he's pitching really good, he's a 6-7 type inning guy if they have to go that long. So it kind of eliminates some of the washiness out of who they got. So then that brings us to managers, Brandon Hyde. So Brandon Hyde was there when they weren't any good. And then he was there when they won 100 games. He's got 3 playoff games under his belt. Obviously didn't win any of them. But he's a guy that first sign of trouble, boy, he goes and gets you. And that's not the edge for Baltimore. They want their starter in there as long as their starter can go. So I don't like Brandon Hyde as the manager in these spots because he's going to go get that bullpen that's crappy and try to mix and match and see what they can do and get outs that way. Whereas the Royals manager, Quattro, he's very familiar with what he's got. He's going to let his guys go as long as they can go before he has to go get the bullpen, which could be too late by the time some of that happens. Defensively, there's no team better than the Royals. They're the number 1 defensive overall ranked team. Braves win, so there you go. Braves are in. Braves play the Padres. And the Brewers will play the Mets. So it's interesting how that kind of plays out. The Brewers just played the Mets. So we'll see how that kind of shakes out. So congratulations to all those teams. Arizona Diamondbacks, who made it to the World Series last year, not going to make the playoffs this year. So Baltimore is the second worst defensive team in the playoffs. Not second worst overall, but I mean second worst in the playoffs in terms of what they've got. So there could be some looseness at the back end of these games. But let's look at numbers and see where we're at. Numbers on this series is 151 at Bookmaker, 147 at Circa, although that's the game. It's 170 and 165, same numbers almost as what Houston has. And I think this is probably a more competitive series, and it's a strange series. But the only way that I can support the Kansas City Royals is if they had an offense. I can't tell you that the 30th ranked, the worst offense in baseball, is going to move on in advance. There's no way. So over a series, you can't win 3 games with the worst offense. So I think obviously series. I don't expect Reagans to win the first game. The Orioles, though, they're not the best team against left-handed pitching. If I pull this up right, whereas they're of all the teams, they're the third worst offense against left-handed pitching, third worst, but super good against right-handed pitching, and that's what they're going to face after Reagans. So I think they fight it. I think they play good against Reagans. I think you bet Baltimore on the series, and then if you're not going to be able to probably bet these numbers because they'll be high individually priced games. So we'll look at overs and unders and totals and runs plus hits plus errors kind of stuff. What's the line in that game? We can do that same exercise. So that one is 7, right? So if that number is 7, take 7 times 2.2 hits to get 7 runs. So you need 15 runs. Then plus the 7 that's going to generate, that's 22. And now you got to figure out that's 22 and a half, right? 22.4. What if they go and say, oh, there's not going to be any errors in this game. Let's make it 23. Well, we already know that the Kansas City side's pretty good, but the Baltimore side's second worst on. So you're going to expect them to make an error or 2. So what if that number comes out, it's 21, and you go over that number? So even though it's a small total 7, you can bet over on runs and hits and errors and still make your numbers. So we'll see how that plays out, what it looks like tomorrow. But again, I don't think there's any reason or any way that you can't think that the Orioles aren't going to win that series. I just don't. So going down to the National League, now that we got a little bit of some of this, first thing I'm going to tell you, what an effort from Atlanta to win that second game. I get it that the Mets didn't have all their best players out there and all that stuff, but emotionally, that's got to be a tough one because they were leading that game that whole time. They lost the lead. They retook the lead. They're going to win the game, and then they lost it. And look, both of those two teams played really hard in that first game. The second game, Atlanta had to rebound and recover from that. And then they had to recover from not having Chris Sale. And I can't tell you that without Chris Sale that this matchup is any good for Atlanta. Look, San Diego is as good as they come in the National League. And I know that the Dodgers are there, and I know the Phillies are there, and all of that. But let me tell you this: San Diego starting pitchers rank 4th. Their bullpen ranks 3rd. No other team can say that. No other team has that kind of a spot. None of them. And then offensively, the San Diego Padres are 3rd in isolated power. They're 11th in weighted on base percentage, and their runs weren't that great. They're 3.3 runs better than average team, but it's they hit home runs and hit doubles at the right time, and that's what makes them who they are, and they dominate right-handed pitching. That's what they do. So they're going to face the Braves, and I don't know what sales status is. Says happy Monday, WSN. Thanks for jumping in there. But if Sale's available and Fried is available, well, Fried's going to pitch, but they're going to hit the righties. They are 34.4 runs better than an average offense against right-handed pitchers. They've hit 73 home runs. They rank 12th in isolated power against right-handed pitchers. They just dominate right-handed pitchers. So that sort of says, okay, when the right-handed pitchers start, San Diego's going to win those games. What does it look like individually matched up when they pitch against the lefties? When is Sale going to pitch? Is Sale going to pitch? I don't know the answers to those questions. We'll have to see what it looks like and where that kind of matches up. But Atlanta, on the other side, is dominant against left-handed pitching. You throw left-handed pitching out there, they hit it. And, when you look at what the Padres are going to pitch, you're going to have Cease, King, Musgrove, Darvish, and maybe Martin Perez. Cease, right-hander, King, right-hander, Musgrove, right-hander, Darvish, right-hander. So they're not going to get what they need. So I think it's a great story. Atlanta made the playoffs. The Mets made the playoffs. But I don't think this is a good matchup for them. I think San Diego's bullpen starting pitchers are great. I do think Atlanta has an edge with the manager. So manager-wise, you got Mike Schilt. Mike Schilt has managed in the playoffs 13 games. He's 4-9. That's not very good in those spots. His pitchers per game number is a 102. That means he goes and gets them. He's not going to let them sit out there. He goes and gets them. And in the playoffs, as long as he's got a bullpen, which he does, I think he can mix and match that and do pretty good. Snitker, he's managed 45 games. He's 24-21 in the playoffs. So anytime you're over 500, that's pretty good. And he's over 500. But he's interesting because the way his collective series is, Jay Berry says, looking forward to these playoffs and matchups. Yeah, look, I think the matchups are pretty interesting. But you got to remember, these teams have other teams waiting on them. And other than, I think, I talked about the Astros, and I think you can talk about the Astros and the Padres, and you can go and say those two teams, they're going to be able to compete against any of these other teams that are sitting out there waiting. So we'll see how it kind of plays out. But if the other teams go on, I think they get wiped out. Like, the Yankees and the Guardians, even though the Guardians I don't really have a lot of respect for. I think that those teams will be able to beat like the Royals, like get them out of here. So hopefully we can weed through some of this, get to the good teams and have really good series, and then get a really good championship series and have a really good World Series. Not that last year was, disappointing in a sense that the teams that were playing weren't good. It's just sometimes you sit there and you go, you got really the Texas Rangers against the Arizona Diamondbacks, and this is the best baseball can offer. And you have 100-win teams that didn't make it through and different things. It's just the way it works. So see how this presents itself. But again, I haven't seen numbers. I don't know what the pitching rotations are going to look like. But San Diego is going to match up well with any of these teams, and San Diego is going to match up very well, I think, to Atlanta. So I like that matchup. But here's the one I think that is going to kind of throw a wrinkle in everybody. I think the Mets I think the Mets match up. It's kind of interesting. I thought I wrote this number down. San Diego's played Atlanta 7 times, and in those 7 times, San Diego's 4-3. So I mean, it was kind of a slugfest. But I'm going to tell you, I like the Mets probably matching up right now against the Brewers, and the Brewers played the Mets 6 times, and the Brewers beat the Mets 5 of them. And they just played. So I'm sitting here going, what the hell? So the reason I tell you that is because when you look at what Milwaukee's going to throw out there, their starting rotation grouping, they rank 24th. So it's all going to be about their bullpen. They have the number 1 bullpen in baseball. So in the second half of the season, Devin Williams is a .8 WAR guy. Aaron Ashby's a .8 guy. Joel Payamps, .8 WAR guy. None of their starting pitchers are going to match up to any starting pitcher that goes out there. That includes, Freddie Peralta, all of them. Aaron Savali's been pitching better, so we'll see individually game-by-game matchup how that goes. But the Mets can throw Manaea and Peterson and Severino, and they can throw McGill. And McGill pitched today, and he got beat, even though they came back and won the game. That would have been the first time he lost since like July 1st. So that's kind of where the Mets are. And the Mets offense is rolling. And offensively for Milwaukee, they rank 24th in isolated power. They rank 24th in weighted on base percentage. They have minus 13.5 runs per game to an average team. Not per game, but overall. That's not good. And think about that. Minus 13.5. And Kansas City's almost double that, how bad they are, 26 runs. So I don't like that for them. They don't they're a little better against lefties, which is good for them because, that's what they're going to face in Manaea and Peterson. And if they throw the other guy, Quintana, if they throw him, that they're going to face lefties. But if they get the righties, Severino, McGill, those guys are going to be decent. But I think you're going to see Manaea. I think you're going to see Peterson. I think you'll see Severino in there. And I think the way they hit, they're going to be fine. And then all of a sudden, you're going to rely on Peralta, Savali, Montas. Those guys have pitched decently, but they don't match up. It's a big gap. They're 24th in starting on the mound. So, and this manager is going to pull those guys fast. So I think you're going to see some other. It says Matt's asked me a question. Hey Scott, does it make any difference that Pasquantino might be back in the lineup for the Royals? It seems like their offensive production went way down with him out. Well, it did. I would tell you there is 100,000% no question that Pasquatch, when he wasn't in their lineup, it went way down. And it's kind of an interesting story with him because if you look at his data and his numbers and all that stuff, it's not like he's the greatest offensive weapon that they have. But I think it's just a presence and it's timely hitting that he provides that matters for them. So does it make a difference? I certainly think it does. If they can get to a point where they're not scoring 2 runs a game. I mean, what was that number? That number was 2.17 runs a game. That's not going to get it done. And if they can get to a point where it's somewhat competitive that way. If they can get to a 4, I mean, I know that's doubling that, but just by adding him, I don't know that does that. But it's look, they only got to win 3 games. So can they do that? Their pitchers will make it so that they can do that. I can't. I don't see it. I do think Pasquantino makes a difference. But he's also got to be healthy, and he's also got to be good. He's got to be in that groove because that's a guy that can go 10 games without doing anything, and then he can go 5 games and be like, who in the hell is this guy? Where did he come from? He's hitting the ball like crazy. He can be that guy. So, and most of these guys can be that way. But Bobby Witt Jr., he's the 300 hitter, the 30 home run guy. But, he's the star, and he just doesn't have a supporting enough cast to beat a team with a little bit of experience. The Orioles don't have a lot of experience. They got a little bit of experience. They got youthful enthusiasm. And pitching matchup wise, I think they can match up halfway decent. It's like I said before, I'd struggle with the Royals in these things. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I like, it's a great story. They're in there. They just needed to do more. And then they can be competitive as hell. But, they didn't. And they are who they are. And I guess the off season will bring what they bring into them. Like I know the St. Louis Cardinals are talking about dismantling their team. So, there's going to be players available there. Like if you want to go get like Goldschmidt, or you want to go get, Arenado or somebody like that, the catcher, Contreras, those guys can hit. And I know everybody likes the players that are, on the Royals and stuff, but they need to change some of that because they need some hitters. So we'll see. So it's a good question. And I do think that anytime that you can provide a bat to what the Royals need, because that's what they need. They need runs. They need a bat. And if they can get that, but they're so far down. They're so far. When you're 30th out of 30 teams in offensive categories that matter, it's not good. And especially in games you absolutely 100% have to win, and you're going to face the best pitching that you can, the league has to offer. So, which in my mind, I sit here and look at this and I go, really, these are the best pitchers? Oh my God, where did all the best pitchers go? So, it's interesting how some things happen that way. But I will say this, the other thing Atlanta can do is Atlanta plays average defense. San Diego plays the worst defense of all the teams in the playoffs. So there could be spots where, San Diego doesn't match up to Atlanta. Atlanta wins a game, steals a game because of that. But, I think San Diego is a team that can come out and they're going to give everything that the Dodgers can take, and they're going to give everything the Phillies can take. If they get if they get those matchups, the Phillies, the Padres are going to be right there. They're not overshadowed by any of those two teams, and they're sitting there in the wings waiting. And we got to figure out who the Dodgers are going to throw and stuff like that. But I think on the other side, I think the Mets are a good story. They got to where they are. The Brewers winning that division's and unbelievable that they did that. But, you also got to think about playoffs in terms of star power. In a 162, stars go to sleep sometimes. They come alive, and they certainly, stand and shine most often, and it's in the playoffs. We talked about Altuve earlier. These guys that live for these moments, I think about the Bryce Harpers of the world. It's going to be a much different team when the playoffs come around. So anyway, my initial thoughts are that my initial thoughts are that I don't think Detroit stands a chance. I like Houston. I think I would bet at Houston in the series and then pick off individual games as I go. And they're not going to get any better than the line that you have with Skubal. I think Baltimore is going to beat Kansas City. You can't, I just still don't. And it was a great question about Pasquantino, but you're the 30th ranked offense. I think that the Baltimore starters are good enough to hang in those games, and the Baltimore offense is just better. And then when it comes to the Mets, and the Brewers, and I'll do more work with this kind of stuff. But I think the Mets and the Brewers are a spot where I know the Mets didn't do well against the Brewers, but I think they will. I think the playoffs are stars will shine. Lindor is really good. I think that you're going to see the Mets do pretty well. I think they're going to have their pitching lined up a little better than what maybe they had. And I don't think that the Brewers don't have any pitching, so they're going to be bullpens. And they don't have star power on offense. They have offense, they just don't have star power on offense. So we'll see if that is enough to get them through a series. And then, San Diego, Atlanta is going to be pretty good. But I think San Diego matches up, and I think so. I think you might have an underdog in the Mets to win a series, but that's the only one. And then when they move on to the next round, I think that's when you're going to see a dominant Philly team with their offense jazzed up with the crowd, and Harper being Harper, and those guys doing really good. I think the Dodgers are going to score like on offense. Just so you know, the Dodgers are 55.3 runs better than an average offense. I mean, come on. They're second in isolated power and first in weighted on base percentage. I'm sorry, that was against right-handed pitchers. They're 33.8 runs better than an average offense in the second half of the season. That's just half the year. That's really good. The next closest team is like 17. So they're that's how good their offense has been. So, I don't know who's going to pitch, but whoever they face is going to have to hit. So they got to score runs to beat them. So we'll see how that plays out. But if it's the Padres can do that. So, and they can pitch to hold them down a little bit. So it'll be an interesting series. So, I'm looking forward to that. The Yankees, I think, are probably an overrated number one seed. When you think about where they stand, that they have go down here to the Yankees. There they are. They have Garrett Cole, right? And if Garrett Cole's Garrett Cole, he's going to be the right guy. That's why I said, hey, where did all the good pitchers go? Well, he is it. He's like Cy Young type guy if he's on. And he's gotten better as the season went on. Carlos Rodon is hit or miss, right? Luis Gil's out of gas. So they're going to need Clark Schmidt, and they're going to need him to hit. So offensively, when you think about where they are offensively to hit, they're just above middle of the pack. They're 10th and 12th. And their bullpen's not been good. So bullpen-wise, the Yankees rank 18th. They got good stuff, but they rank 18th. So we'll see how that goes. And like the Guardians, they rank 23rd on starting pitching. So when these teams come out and have to go play them, as long as if I say the Orioles come out and play, I'm just making it up. I don't know what it looks like, but say it's the Orioles or Houston, they're going to beat them. It'll be competitive, but they're going to beat them because they got pitching. Houston particularly. Then Houston and Cleveland doesn't have offense. So anyway, it is what it is. So those are going to be interesting and fun to see how that goes. I think my opinion would be is if you want a dark horse in the American League or a team that I think could go, it's the Houston Astros. I think they got the pitching that can get you there, and they've got the experience that can get you there. They need Alvarez to be playing, and they need Tucker to be good. But those guys can do all this. They've done it, and this is when stars shine. So, and there's no real dominant teams out there, so I think they can do it. And in the National League, I think the Padres can do it. Those are non-favorite kind of teams that I think you can kind of look at to say, hey, let's put some money on these guys and see where they go. But hey, great questions. Great time, guys. I appreciate you stopping in. I will do a show tomorrow, and we will have some picks for official picks and plays and stuff like that, and some bets. And got to look at all the numbers and see what we can come up with and have some fun with this. So, guys, I appreciate it. Have a great night, and I will talk to you tomorrow. I'm going to be on Jeff's show tomorrow too. I'm sure he's going to ask me questions about stuff. So, if if you want to catch me on Jeff's show, I don't remember what time, 10:30, I think, in the mornings when I'm going to be on with him. So anyway, I will talk to you later. Let's have some fun. And if you bet football, it's time for football. Talk to you guys later.